Welcome back to our Bible study series on profiles in faith. This is the fifth one, and it's about Jacob returning home. And we're reading from Genesis 31 through 35. Again, there's a lot of material, but we're going to try to hit the highlights as we read through this section. Let's review, and if you would like a copy of this study guide, you can either call the front desk at the clubhouse and ask for a copy on paper, or you can find it on your resident app. There is included in there a map that tells a little bit about this that may help you if you're like me, a real visual person. So leading up to this, you remember Jacob and Esau were twins, born to Isaac and Rebekah. Jacob was the second born, but quickly, because of his favor with his mother, he ends up tricking his brother Esau into giving up his birthright, even though Esau was the firstborn, and his blessing. And that was done in a very sneaky way. But now Esau is very upset, and so his mother sends him off to Haran back in what is now Iraq, in order, first of all, to protect him from his brother, but secondly, so that he might find a wife among their people instead of the foreigners in whose land they are living. So Jacob goes back. He arranges to marry one of the daughters of Laban. Laban tricks him. He works 7 years in order to what he thinks marry Rachel, but they marry him to Leah first. Then he gets Rachel as well and has to work another 7 years. And then begins to build up his own flocks of sheep and goats and wealth. And Laban is jealous. And so here we're picking up in chapter 31, where as Jacob's star is rising, Laban's seems to be falling, partly due to some of his own, some of the way he lives his life. And so here we start, and it begins chapter 31, verse 14, with Rachel and Leah, Jacob's two wives. So then Rachel and Leah replied, "Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners?" See, they're feeling already pushed out by their father. Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you. Speaking to Jacob about it was time to leave and go back to Canaan. So Jacob put his children and his wives on camels, and he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods he had accumulated in Padan Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now, I believe, if I'm correct, he's been gone 20 years. When Laban had gone out to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household gods. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away. So he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. Now Gilead would be east of the Jordan River today into what is the country of Jordan. The household gods that Rachel stole, we have through archaeology uncovered small little figurines that appear in a lot of places that seem to be what one would call their household idols. It would be like they'd have a little niche in the wall or a little altar or something. And so all of these gods represented different things. And so they were often kept and treasured in the house as sort of insurance that they would be honored and protected by the gods. And it would have been, to those who relied on that for their faith, losing them would have been a catastrophic event. So Rachel stuck in and took them. Now, did she do that because she had also been raised with them and felt like they should go with her? Was she rebelling against her father? Did she feel like he owed stuff, so she was out of some spite taking them? We don't really know, but she did steal them, and that sort of continues the whole motive or motif of deception that sort of goes through the stories here. So they had left without Laban knowing it, and now verse 22. On the third day, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Taking his relatives with him, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up to him in the hill country of Gilead. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country of Gilead when Laban overtook him, and Laban and his relatives camped there too. Then Laban said to Jacob, "What have you done? You've deceived me. You've carried off my daughters like captives in war. Why did you run off secretly and deceive me? Why didn't you tell me? So I could send you away with joy and singing to the music of timbrels and harps. You didn't even let me kiss my grandchildren and my daughters goodbye. You have done a foolish thing. I have the power to harm you, but last night the God of your father said to me, 'Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, good or bad.' Now you have gone off because you long to return to your father's household." You can sort of accept that. "But why did you steal my gods?" Jacob answered Laban, "I was afraid because I thought you would take your daughters away from me by force." He didn't trust him at all. "But if you find anyone who has your gods, that person shall not live. In the presence of our relatives, see for yourself whether there is anything of yours here with me. If so, take it." Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the gods. So now he got a problem. So Laban went into Rachel's tent, into Jacob's tent first, and then Leah's tent, and finally into the tent of the 2 female servants, but he found nothing. After he came out, he remembered and entered Rachel's tent. Now Rachel's the one who had taken the gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched through everything in the tent but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So he searched but couldn't find the household gods. Jacob was angry and took Laban to task. "What is my crime?" he asked Laban. "How have I wronged you that you hunt me down? Now that you have searched through all of my goods, what have you found that belongs to your household? Put it here in front of your relatives and mine, and let them judge between the 2 of us. I have been with you for 20 years now. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. I did not bring you animals torn by wild beasts. I bore the loss myself. And you demanded payment from me for whatever was stolen by day or night. This was my situation. The heat consumed me in the daytime and the cold at night, and sleep fled from my eyes." In other words, he's been working hard as a shepherd with the flocks. "It was like this for the 20 years I was in your household. I worked for you 14 years for your 2 daughters and 6 years for your flocks, and you changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac had not been with me, I would surely have sent away empty-handed. You would have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you." Well, Laban said to Jacob, "The women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. All you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these daughters of mine or the children they've borne? Come now, let's make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us." So they're going to come to an agreement to end any conflict that could come from this in the future. Verse 45. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. If you notice, that's something that was done quite often, and that's the way to make a monument there. He said to his relatives, "Gather some stones." So they took stones and piled them in a heap and ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, and Jacob called it Gilead. So Jacob took a stone and set it as a pillar. Oh, I just read that. Verse 48. Laban said, "This heap of stones is a witness between you and me today. That is why it's called Gilead. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, 'May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, or if you take any wives beside my daughters, even though no one's with us, remember that God is a witness between you and me.'" That word Mizpah means like a watchtower, or the tower was like a witness to their agreement. Instead of today, we might sign a contract and get it notarized. This was a way to mark their agreement. And the phrase, "May God watch over you," has persisted from this verse. Verse 51, Laban also told Jacob, "Here is this heap, and here is this pillar I've set between you and me. It is a witness that I will not go past this to your side to harm you, and you will not go past this heap and pillar to my side to harm me. May the God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us." So Jacob took an oath in the name of the Father, in the name of the fear of his father Isaac. He offered a sacrifice there in the hill country and invited the relatives to the meal. After they'd eaten, they spent the night there. And so early the next morning, Laban kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. He left and returned home. So now Jacob has pretty much settled what was behind him. Now, of course, he still had to go back and face his brother Esau and see Isaac and his mother Rebekah. So Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau, who was in the land of Seir, country of Edom. He instructed them, "This is what you are to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants." So he's become wealthy. "Now I'm sending this message to my lord that I might find favor in your eyes." So he's sending ahead, hoping to get Esau's favor and not surprise him, to try to ease their reconciliation. So when the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, "We went to see your brother Esau, and now he's coming to meet you." That sounds good. "And 400 men are with him." Oh, maybe that's not so good. Why is he bringing 400 men? Uh-oh. So in great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Jacob comes and attacks one group, the other group that is left they at least escape. So he is very worried here. Then Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, I'll make you prosper.' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become two camps full of all those belongings and people. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers of their children. But you have said, I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted." Jacob's trying to remind God of the promise that God made to him, and begging that he continues to make that. So we have a few verses here where it says that he picks out 200 goats and 20 male goats and all of this all of these part of his herd in order to send them ahead to Esau as a gift. So we're going to skip over. And he said, you were to tell Esau. So there were, I think, like 3 different sections, different waves of gifts of a servant leading with the flocks. So Jacob sent these gifts ahead, but he spent the night in the camp. Boy, Jacob is really trying to butter up his brother, isn't he? Now, the next few verses are famous because they're about Jacob wrestling with an angel or with God in some kind of fashion that night. Have you ever stayed up or slept poorly because there was something big happening the next day? I think probably we all have. We get nervous, our mind is worrying about things, we're restless at night. Well, this is one of those kind of a situations. And the interesting thing is this wrestling that he has. So this is his night of kind of wrestling with stuff that's going to happen. Now, the story is about Jacob and an angel wrestling, but I'm referring also to that kind of internal where we wrestle emotionally or mentally with things. So here we go. Verse 22. Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. That's the Jabbok River. After he sent them across the stream, he also sent all of his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overcome Jacob, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. And then the man said, let me go, for it's daybreak. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. The man asked, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob again asked, please tell me your name. But he said, why do you ask my name? And then he gave him a blessing. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, it is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared. So this was an encounter with a man, an angel, somehow a representative of God. But it's also when Jacob became Israel, which of course is the name that carries on because he had 12 sons for the 12 tribes, and today that is of course the name of the nation of Israel. Names are very important here, and that's true in much of the Bible where the name, often means a certain thing. So the naming of him is Israel, because he struggled with God and humans and have overcome, is very important. Did Jacob really come face to face with God? He is saying that, even though it was some kind of being that he struggled with, but he had definitely this encounter with God. Well, let's finish up his reunion here. Chapter 33. This was the next morning. Jacob looked up and there was Esau coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the servants. He put the female servants and their children in front. So if something happened, at least they would be the buffer. Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph, his favorites, in the rear. He himself went ahead and bowed to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. And you can picture that. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Esau looked up and saw the women and children. Who are these with you? Jacob answered, they're the children God has graciously given your servant. So then the female servants and children approached and bowed, And then Leah and her children came and bowed. And last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed before Esau. Esau said, "What's the meaning of all those flocks and herds that I met on my way there? To favor your eyes, Lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob, "if I have found favor, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God." Now that's an exaggeration, but he is still, I think, trying to make sure Esau is not going to hurt him. "Now that you've received me favorably, accept the present that I brought to you. For God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." So Esau accepted the gift. So they're back together. Chapter 35, or at least they're civil with each other, because they do go their different ways. So this is just, Jacob returns, God appears to him and blesses him. And it repeats what we had earlier. God said, "Your name is Jacob, your name now will be Israel." Verse 11. God said, "I am God Almighty, be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he talked to him. So this is a reaffirmation of the covenant God has made to Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, Israel. So Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God talked to him. He poured a drink offering on it and poured oil on it. And Jacob called the place where God talked to him Bethel. Well, Jacob had 12 sons, so we want to remember this because this is very important. The sons of Leah, the first wife, was Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun. Then the sons of Rachel, who was really his favorite, were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Rachel's servant Bilhah was Dan and Naphtali, and the sons of Leah's servant Zilpah was Gad and Asher. So those are the 12 sons of Jacob. Jacob came home to his father Isaac near what is now Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, old and full of years. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. I like that phrase, he died and was gathered to his people, reunited with those who had already gone before him. So this is the story of Jacob coming back. 12 sons, one of them, Joseph, we're going to talk about next week. Thank you.